She had the world at her feet, limousines, red carpets, and a father whose signature could sway markets overnight. Yet behind designer sunglasses, Amelia Carter, only daughter of real estate tycoon Victor Carter, felt hollow. At 18, she breezed through an elite academy in New York City, not through grades, but through power. Teachers looked away from missed assignments. Students whispered about her arrogance. She wore her last name like a crown, believing it made her untouchable. But beneath the gloss, Amelia was failing, not just in academics, she was failing herself. They said her last name could part a crowd. It could hush a boardroom, soften a headline, erase a mistake as neatly as a damp cloth takes up chalk. The name was Carter. Amelia wore it like a jacket 2 sizes too big, expensive, swooping, and never quite hers. On a Saturday night in February, under chandeliers the size of small planets, Amelia stood at the edge of a charity gala for coastal resilience, the kind of event with a string quartet and silent auction trips to places no one in the room would ever actually visit. Photographers took pictures of her father, Victor Carter, when he laughed and when he didn't. Men touched his elbow, as if proximity might drip profit. Amelia listened to the tide of adult talk, regulatory relief, pipeline, runway, and felt the salt of boredom in her mouth. Someone handed her a flute of sparkling water as if it were a baton. She held it. She smiled when smiled at. She wore a white dress that made her look angelic and non-committal. In photos, she would appear to be delighted. In reality, she counted the seconds on a clock she couldn't see. "Your posture," her father murmured without looking down at her. "You're folding inward." "I'm cold," she replied. "You're bored." "That too. You'll learn to prefer rooms like this." "I'll learn to survive them." He gave the canned smile he used when anger had to be disguised for cameras. "Tomorrow, we talk about your grades. They're fine. Your dean disagrees. She's dramatic. She sent me data." The quartet shifted into something lilting and forgettable. Amelia's phone buzzed in her clutch, messages from people orbiting her like moths. "Are you coming to Lenox later? Bring the driver?" Her thumb hovered over yes, because yes was what she always typed. Instead, she wrote, "Not tonight." The screen went black, reflecting her own face back at her like a stranger's. She didn't sleep that night. The penthouse was never truly dark, but the half-light felt heavier than shadows. She thought of her school, polished brick, ivy stitched across walls, an assembly hall lined with portraits of alumni who looked down with stern pride. She thought of her English teacher's notes scrawled in red, "Not your voice, Amelia. Something borrowed, something practiced." She thought of how her chest tightened whenever someone asked what she liked, not what she owned. By morning, gray skies pressed against glass like a weight. Her father sat at the marble island, white shirt crisp, coffee black, laptop glowing with constellations of numbers only he could read. We talked. You talked. I listened. "You're failing calculus, skimming literature. You didn't turn in your biology lab report again. I'll fix it." With what? A signature? A smile? His tone was calm, but the words had edges. "You're not a deal to be rescued, Amelia. You're a person. Rescue yourself." What does that mean? It means the car key on the counter is mine, not yours. The cards are paused. If you want to get to school, be ready in 10. We'll walk. The winter air carved into her lungs. The city looked different on foot. Bakery windows fogged from ovens, a man tapping rhythms out of a plastic bucket, delivery trucks hissing against the curb. Her father walked quickly, his stride clipped and decisive, as if even pavement needed to be conquered. He waved at no one. He had two faces, one for deals, one for life. She rarely saw the second. At the school's wrought iron gate, he stopped. We'll reassess at midterm. If you need a tutor, hire one. If you need time, make it. Names are expensive to maintain. Pay for yours with work. Is this supposed to be motivational? It's supposed to be true. He studied her face for a beat longer than usual, as though searching for a sentence he couldn't quite find. Amelia, if you choose average, but it's yours, I will be proud. I can't carry a life you refuse to stand in. The gate closed behind him. She felt the metal bite her palm as she pushed inside. The hallway shone like freshly polished silver, the air faint with lemon oil. That shine didn't appear on its own. Near the side entrance, a man moved a mop in patient figure eights. He was tall but slightly stooped, his beard a salt-white shadow, his eyes the color of dusk light, steady, noticing. He glanced at Amelia, not at her shoes, not at her coat, but at her face. "Morning," he said. She answered without thinking, the word mechanical on her lips. He pushed the mop bucket forward. Its wheels squealed faintly. The motion was deliberate, almost musical. Behind him, a brass plaque listing donors gleamed. Brass, she thought, needed polishing the way her last name needed maintaining. Left alone, it dulled. "You missed a spot," she said, instantly hearing the cruelty in her voice. He didn't flinch. He followed her gaze, then asked, "Do you see dirt?" "No." "Then what did I miss?" "I don't know," she muttered, suddenly aware she sounded like a child. Ah, he wrung them up with quiet patience. Jokes land better when the floor's dry. A group of juniors swept past, laughter trailing like perfume. Noah, the star athlete with a senator's smile, glanced at her with his usual mixture of invitation and evaluation. She lifted her chin, the reflex automatic. "What's your name?" the janitor asked. She almost answered, "Carter," as though it were enough, as though it were a title instead of a surname. But his eyes weighted differently, without deference. "Amelia," she said. "Mr. Booker. Ellis, if you like me." "I don't know you." "You will." She left before he could be right. Homeroom bled into calculus, where symbols crawled across the page like insects marching off a cliff. She turned in a quiz that looked more like a surrender note. Mr. Klein sighed. "See me after school," he said softly. "We'll figure a plan." At lunch, beneath the skylight where the popular table gathered, Mara twirled her hair and asked, "You're pale. Are you sick?" "Fine," Amelia said. "You should sleep," June added. Someone from behind them murmured loudly enough to carry. "Carter without a driver. Carter at the gate like the rest of us." Snickers followed. Her cheeks flared. She pushed her tray aside, half an apple, untouched water, and left. The hallway was quieter, the air sharp with disinfectant. Mr. Booker stood on a step stool, polishing the brass crest of the school's founder. He moved the cloth in slow, purposeful circles. "You ever notice," he said, not looking at her, "that names on plaques collect dust fastest? They're not supposed to. They do anyway." She crossed her arms, defensive. "You really think polishing a crest is meaningful?" "Meaning isn't in the shine. It's in the hands that bothered." Something in her chest shifted, though she masked it with a scoff. He climbed down, tucked the blackened cloth into his pocket, and gave her a look that was equal parts challenge and invitation. "You look like someone who wants to ask for help, but doesn't know how." Her throat tightened. She opened her mouth to deny it, then shut it again. The counselor's office smelled faintly of stale tea and eucalyptus. Miss Reyes gestured toward the chair with that
Practiced warmth adults used on students they didn't quite believe in. Want the good news first? She asked. Is there any? You haven't learned how to quit. That's a skill? It's a condition. Miss Reyes tapped the folder on her desk. You've been lucky here. People assume you'll land on your feet, but the ground is lower than it used to be, and your feet are not steady. What's the bad news? You're in danger of not graduating on time if this trajectory holds. Amelia stared at the potted plant in the corner, one leaf browned at the tip. So fix the trajectory. I'll help if you want helping. Miss Reyes's voice gentled. But fear isn't enough of a reason. Fear works. Not for long. It burns out. The words clung to her ears all the way down the hallway. She slowed near the trophy case, staring at silver cups etched with names long forgotten. Dust gathered at the corners no one wiped. Names could be powerful, yes, but names could also be abandoned. And there he was again. Mr. Booker, folding the yellow caution sign. The bucket sloshed as he dragged it back. Do you enjoy this? She asked, unable to hold the question any longer. Cleaning? Day after day? He raised an eyebrow. Enjoy? No. Respect? Yes. How do you respect cleaning? By doing it right. Her arms folded, a shield more than a pose. I'm supposed to have a plan. Plans are maps. Maps don't walk you anywhere. You talk like a book, she muttered, and this time it wasn't quite an insult. He chuckled, low and warm. Maybe I read. Maybe I listened when wiser folks opened their mouths. My father wants me to be someone he can shake hands with at a gala. I'd shake your hand right here on this floor. Why? Because you're here. Because you asked instead of pretending. She looked down at the wet shine spreading across the tile. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't photographed. But it was steady, real. Something her life had never been. Mr. Booker, she said slowly, if I wanted to start over, actually start, where would I begin? He peeled off his gloves, setting them carefully on the bucket's edge. His hands were lined, scarred, older than anything she could imagine for herself. At the place you least want to look. At the mirror that isn't a screen. The hallway was too quiet. Her heart was too loud. I'm in at 6, he added. The building's quiet then. Quiet is good for beginnings. She half laughed. I don't get up at 6. You will, he said. Not a dare, a door. That night, the penthouse lights dimmed but wouldn't darken fully. Amelia stared at the ceiling, phone glowing by her side. Set alarm? Don't set alarm. She thought of brass plaques that dulled without attention. She thought of her father's clipped words, rescue yourself. And she thought of an old man with calm eyes who believed she was capable of asking. At 5:25, her phone trembled. She almost silenced it, almost rolled over and let comfort win. Instead, she swung her legs onto the cold floor and felt, for the first time in a long time, awake. She dressed in ordinary clothes, no glitter, no label, just jeans, sneakers, a sweater. The doorman didn't comment when she left early. In fact, he didn't seem to recognize her without gloss. That felt like freedom. The city at dawn was a rehearsal. Delivery trucks grinding, joggers puffing steam into gray air, shopkeepers dragging up metal shutters. The street smelled of bread and wet concrete. For once, no one stared at her. The side entrance to school was stiff but opened with a shove. Inside, the building hummed. Mr. Booker was there already, mop leaning against the wall, thermos in hand. You came, he said. I did. Coffee?
He poured into a paper cup with City Diner stamped across it. She hesitated. I don't drink coffee. You do now. The first sip was too strong, too hot, but it grounded her in a way nothing else had. Before we start, he said, we set a rule. What rule? He smiled with his eyes more than his mouth. No pretending. For once, she didn't argue. Okay, no pretending. That was the beginning. Not a contract, not a tutor's hourly rate, just two people in a hallway at 6 a.m., with coffee too bitter to swallow and silence too sacred to waste. Amelia Carter had no idea that one small agreement would change the trajectory of her entire life. The hallway was silent, except for the hum of unseen machines and the faint squeak of his bucket wheels. The coffee was still too hot, but she sipped anyway, grimacing. He chuckled softly. Strong, isn't it? It's awful, she admitted. That's how you know it works. She smiled despite herself, a real one, unplanned. Mr. Booker leaned his mop against the wall and studied her. So, tell me, why are you here? Because you told me to. That's not enough. I can tell people lots of things. They don't always come. Amelia shrugged. Maybe I'm tired of pretending I know what I'm doing. There it is, he said. The first honest sentence I've heard from you. She blinked. You don't even know me. He tilted his head. You'd be surprised how much you can know about someone from how they walk down a hallway. And what did you know about me? She asked, half defensive. That you walk like the ground owes you. But your eyes, they look like someone waiting to be caught. The words hit harder than any teacher's red pen ever had. She looked away, pretending to study the glossy floor. So what, are you a philosopher now? He shook his head. No, just a man who's lived long enough to recognize pride when it's eating someone alive. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then he reached into his old canvas satchel and pulled out a notebook, the cover battered, the corners curled. He placed it on the bench beside her. What's this? Blank pages. Start filling them. Not what your teachers want, not what your father demands. Write what you see, what you feel, what you know but are afraid to admit. She hesitated. And you'll read it? Only if you want me to. It's yours first. She flipped it open. The paper was rough, unbleached, not like the expensive stationery her father sometimes gave her for thank-you notes she never wrote. This felt raw. What do I even write? She asked. Try this, he said, leaning forward. Finish the sentence. I am not who they think I am because... She stared at the page. The pen in her hand felt heavier than any diamond bracelet she'd ever worn. Slowly, reluctantly, she wrote, I am not who they think I am, because most days I don't even know who I am myself. The ink glistened. The words startled her. She wanted to scratch them out. Instead, she slammed the notebook shut. That's enough, she muttered. He smiled, not unkindly. It's a start. From that morning on, a strange rhythm began. Before the school filled with chatter and footsteps, Amelia slipped through the side entrance. Mr. Booker was always there, either pushing his mop, polishing plaques, or sitting on that same bench with a thermos of too strong coffee. He never lectured. He asked questions. Why do you think people fear silence? What scares you more, failing or being seen as a failure? What's the one thing you want to do that has nothing to do with your father's name? Sometimes she answered,
Sometimes she stayed silent. But slowly, the notebook filled. Some pages were angry rants, some shaky reflections, some confessions she'd never spoken aloud. At first, she hid the notebook in the bottom of her backpack, terrified someone might find it. But soon, she carried it openly, as if daring the world to question her. The change didn't go unnoticed. Teachers who once sighed when she turned in sloppy work began raising eyebrows at complete essays. In English, her reflections on Baldwin's Sonny's Blues startled even her jaded teacher. "You wrote this?" he asked, scanning her paper. "Yes," she said, daring him to doubt. "This is thoughtful, personal." She shrugged, but inside, warmth spread. At lunch, however, the backlash began. Her so-called friends mocked her for showing up early, for scribbling in that old man's diary. Mara sneered. "Are you seriously letting a janitor tutor you? That's tragic." For once, Amelia didn't bite back with cruelty. She closed her notebook, stood up, and walked away. The silence she left behind was louder than their laughter.
But her father noticed too. One evening, she came home to find him standing by the floor-to-ceiling window, holding her latest progress report. "These grades," he said flatly, "better. Not excellent, but better. I'm trying." He turned to her, suspicion in his eyes. "With who?" "I hired 3 tutors. You scared them all away." She hesitated. She could lie, say she'd studied alone. But for the first time in her life, she didn't want to hide the truth. "Mr. Booker," she said softly. "Who?" "The janitor at school." He blinked, then barked out a laugh sharp enough to cut glass. "A janitor? That's who's teaching my daughter?" "He's more than that. He he listens. He makes me think." Victor Carter's jaw clenched. "He mops floors. That's all that matters. And you," he jabbed the paper at her, "you are embarrassing this family. If word gets out that my daughter is taking lessons from a janitor—" "She sees me," Amelia snapped, voice trembling but fierce. "You never did." The words echoed in the vast penthouse like a stone dropped into an empty well. Victor's face hardened. "If you keep going down this road, Amelia, you lose everything. No car, no allowance, no name. Don't test me." She bit her lip, but said the one thing she couldn't swallow back. "Maybe I need to lose everything to find out who I actually am." For a heartbeat, silence reigned. Then he turned away, muttering, "Ungrateful child." The next morning she arrived at school to find Mr. Booker gone. His bucket, his mop, his satchel, empty. "What happened to Mr. Booker?" she asked the secretary at the front desk. "Budget cuts," she said briskly. "We had to let some staff go." Amelia's stomach sank. Budget cuts? Everyone knew it was a lie. The hallways felt hollow without him. The notebook in her bag was heavier than ever. She tried to write, but the words dried up. Teachers' praise meant little. Friends' laughter cut deeper. She felt herself slipping again. Until she saw the flyer pinned to the bulletin board. Senior Speech Contest. Topic: What does it mean to succeed in life? Normally, she would have scoffed, but something in her chest stirred. Maybe this was her chance, not to win, but to speak. That night, she opened the notebook and began to write. "This isn't for grades. This isn't for applause. This is for him." The day of the contest, the auditorium buzzed with families in tailored coats, students in crisp uniforms, college scouts with clipboards. Amelia stood backstage, palms sweating, notebook clutched tight. When her name was called, she walked to the podium, not in designer heels, but in plain flats, hair pulled back, eyes steady. "My name is Amelia Carter," she began. "Some of you know me as the girl who wasted every chance, who had everything but cared about nothing. That was true until I met someone no one in this room ever noticed." The crowd shifted, curious. "He wasn't my teacher, not officially. He wasn't paid to help me. He didn't have an office or a title. He carried a mop, but he carried something else too, a wisdom I never knew I needed." A hush settled. Even the scouts stopped scribbling. "He taught me that real success isn't about being admired. It's about being useful. He didn't just clean our floors. He cleaned the arrogance out of me. He showed me that the chains I thought protected me were the same ones holding me down." Her voice wavered, then grew stronger. "So what does it mean to succeed in life? It's not grades. It's not money. It's not your last name. It's becoming someone worth remembering, someone who can see others when the world refuses to. And for me, that started with Mr. Booker." For a moment, silence. Then one clap, then another, and then the room erupted. Cheers, whistles, applause that shook the walls. From the back row, an old man in a worn cap wiped a tear from his eye. He'd come quietly just to see her shine. And Amelia, for the first time, felt like her name meant something because of what she did, not what she owned. The applause followed her off stage like a wave that wouldn't break. Backstage, she clutched her notebook against her chest and tried to steady her breathing. For once, the noise wasn't frightening, it was freeing. When the contest ended, clusters of parents congratulated their children. Teachers offered handshakes, and the scouts scribbled notes on clipboards. Amelia drifted past it all, her ears ringing with something deeper than claps. Near the auditorium doors, she saw him, Mr. Booker, standing quietly, cap in hand, his work jacket buttoned to the throat. Their eyes met across the crowd. He nodded once, a small gesture, but it carried more weight than any trophy. She pushed through the sea of students. "You came." "Wouldn't miss it," he said. His voice was rough but warm, like gravel under sunlight. They, they heard me." Her voice shook, and not from fear. "They did, but more important," he tapped the notebook she held tight. "You heard yourself." Her throat tightened. She wanted to thank him, to pour out every word she'd written since that first dawn meeting. But before she could speak, her father's voice cut through the noise. "Amelia." Victor Carter stood near the stage steps, sharp in a gray suit, phone still in his hand as though he'd only paused to deal long enough to scold her. His jaw was set, his eyes unreadable. "You embarrassed yourself, talking about a janitor on a stage like this?" Amelia's fists clenched, but her voice stayed calm. "I didn't embarrass myself. I told the truth." "Then truth doesn't matter if perception kills it." "Then maybe perception's the problem." A silence stretched between them. Students slowed their chatter, sensing the tension. Victor's voice dropped to a warning. "This ends here. No more speeches, no more janitors. You're a Carter. You carry this name, not drag it through dirt." But Amelia didn't flinch. For the first time, she saw her father not as unshakable, but small, trapped by a pride bigger than him. "If being a Carter means being blind, then maybe I don't need the name at all." Gasps rippled from the students nearby. Victor froze as though struck. His phone buzzed, but he didn't look down. He turned away, jaw tight, and walked out. Mr. Booker watched silently, his face unreadable. When Amelia finally looked back at him, she whispered, "I don't know if I just ruined everything." He smiled faintly. "Or maybe you just started." The days that followed were turbulent. Some students whispered admiration. Did you hear her speech? She actually made sense. Others mocked her louder. Imagine bragging about taking advice from a janitor. Teachers treated her differently too, not quite sure where to place her anymore. But Amelia didn't shrink. She carried the notebook everywhere, and she kept writing. Each page bled with reflections, questions, sparks of clarity. One evening, she knocked on a small brick house on the edge of Queens. The curtains were thin, the porch light dim. Mr. Booker opened the door, surprise flickering across his face. "You found me." "I wanted to," she said, holding up an envelope. Inside were three things: her graduation acceptance letter, her contest award, and a handwritten note. "I want to start something," she told him. "A place for kids like me, the ones who get written off as arrogant or hopeless. A place where they can learn the way you taught me, honest, hard, without shame." He unfolded the note, reading her messy handwriting aloud. "The Booker Foundation." His hands trembled. "You'd put my name on it?" "It's already yours," she said softly. He wiped a tear with the back of his hand. "Only if we do it together." "Always," she whispered. Months later, in a converted community center painted fresh white, the doors of the Booker Foundation opened. The first day brought 10 students, kids who'd been told they'd never make it, kids who carried scars invisible to report cards. Mr. Booker taught the way he always had, through questions sharper than answers. Amelia ran the programs, but never stopped learning. They sat in circles, read Baldwin and Hughes, wrote their truths, and debated until their throats ached. Word spread. By winter, the 10 had become 50. By spring, a local newspaper ran a headline: "Billionaire's daughter chooses legacy of learning over luxury." Victor Carter came quietly to the opening of the new wing. He stood in the back, arms crossed, watching his daughter speak to the crowd of parents, teachers, and city officials. "She didn't just build this place. She rebuilt herself," Mr. Booker said beside him. Victor's eyes shone with something rare: uncertainty. When the ceremony ended, he stepped outside where Amelia was catching her breath. "I didn't expect to cry," he admitted. "I didn't expect to forgive you." But she did. They hugged, not as tycoon and heir, but as two people trying. Years passed. The foundation grew into a movement. One evening, Amelia stood at a national education conference accepting an award. Cameras flashed, the audience hushed. She gripped the microphone, took a breath, and said, "They said I had everything, until I met the man who showed me what I was missing. He didn't save my grades. He saved my life. Greatness doesn't come from being seen. It comes from seeing others. And sometimes the one who teaches you most isn't wearing a suit. Sometimes he's holding a mop." The room erupted in applause. And somewhere, in the front row, Mr. Booker smiled, proud not of the stage, but of the girl who had finally stepped into her own name. If this story moved you, don't let it stop here. Share it. Talk about it. Remember that true success isn't about power or wealth. It's about transformation. And the greatest teachers often go unseen. Hit that subscribe button below, join this community, and let's keep telling stories that remind the world
Greatness isn't being seen, it's seeing others.